Captain Hyojin led the Vectari boarding party to the HSS Persistence's main briefing room, where the full scope of the threat became clear. The walls were covered with star charts, tracking data, and surveillance images that told a story of patient observation and careful planning. The humans had been hunting the Devourers far longer than they had initially revealed. The first contact with a Devourer ship occurred 18 months ago in the Outer Rim territories. Science Officer Jun-Ho explained, manipulating a holographic display that showed the progression of encounters across multiple star systems. A human colony ship discovered what appeared to be a derelict alien vessel. Within 6 hours, the entire colony and 3 nearby planets had been reduced to base elements. The images were horrifying. Where once there had been thriving worlds with cities and vegetation, now only empty space remained, as if the planets had never existed at all. Even the local star showed signs of having matter drawn from its outer layers. Engineer Da-Yoon stepped forward to explain the technical aspects of what they were facing. Devourer ships are not built in any conventional sense. They appear to be grown, like living organisms, but they operate on principles we are still trying to understand. Their hulls can adapt to almost any form of attack, absorbing energy weapons and restructuring themselves to resist kinetic damage. Taemin, the Vectari engineer, studied the data with growing fascination and horror. The energy requirements for molecular disassembly on this scale should be impossible. How do they power such operations? They use the matter they consume, Wonsik replied, bringing up detailed scans of a Devourer vessel. Each ship is essentially a mobile factory that breaks down planets, asteroids, even other ships into energy and raw materials. The process is self-sustaining and grows more efficient with each world they consume. Boram had been studying the tactical displays, and what she saw there troubled her more than the technical explanations. These approach vectors show intelligence and planning. The Devourers are not just consuming randomly. They are selecting targets based on strategic value. Captain Hyojin nodded approvingly at the security chief's observation. Exactly. The Devourers prioritize systems with high populations and advanced technology. They seem to derive additional benefits from consuming civilized worlds compared to uninhabited planets. Our analysts believe they are not just feeding on matter, but on the complexity of organized societies. The briefing continued with more disturbing revelations. The Devourers operated in small fleets, usually 3 to 5 ships, that would approach a system from multiple directions simultaneously. Their vessels could travel faster than conventional ships by somehow compressing space around themselves, making traditional defensive strategies useless. How many human ships are involved in this Project Lighthouse? Boram asked. If these creatures are as dangerous as you claim, surely it requires a massive military response. Weapons specialist Kyung-mi smiled grimly at the question. Project Lighthouse operates with exactly 47 ships scattered across the galaxy. Each ship has a crew of 3 to 8 humans, and we coordinate our activities through quantum communication networks. The numbers seemed impossibly small to the Vectari crew. Taemin did quick calculations in his head. Less than 300 humans are responsible for defending the entire galaxy against this threat. That is not a military force. That is a symbolic gesture. You think like a conventional military strategist, Engineer Da-Yoon said, beginning to show the Vectari team through the ship's modified systems. Human doctrine focuses on asymmetric warfare. We do not try to match the enemy's strength. We find their weaknesses and exploit them completely. Da-Yoon led them to the ship's weapons bay, where conventional arms had been replaced with devices that looked more like mining equipment than military hardware. Devourers cannot efficiently process certain radioactive isotopes. The consumption process that makes them so dangerous also makes them vulnerable to specific types of contamination. The weapons were nuclear devices, but not in any configuration the Vectari recognized. Instead of explosive warheads, they were designed to create cascading radiation effects that would spread through the Devourer ship's organic hulls like an infection. We have been seeding this entire region with modified nuclear mines, Wonsik explained, showing them the navigation charts that revealed the true scope of their preparations. When the Devourer scouts enter the system, they will find themselves in the middle of a carefully prepared trap. As the briefing continued, the human crew began bringing their Vectari guests out of hibernation systems that had been hidden throughout the ship. The sight of humans emerging from concealed chambers explained how they had remained undetected for so long, but it also revealed the extent of their preparation for this encounter. How long have you been planning this operation? Deho asked over the communication link from the Brightfinder. His ship's systems had been restored to his control, though he suspected the humans could retake them at any moment if they chose. Project Lighthouse has been operational for 3 years, Captain Hyojin replied. But this specific ambush has been in preparation for 8 months. We have been tracking the Devourer fleet since they left the Kepler sector, calculating their route and preparing countermeasures. The scale of human patience and planning impressed the Vektari crew. To maintain a deception for 8 months while preparing for a single engagement went beyond their understanding of military logistics. It suggested a level of commitment to long-term strategy that their own culture found difficult to comprehend. Junho showed them the sensor readings that tracked the approaching Devourer ships. The 3 vessels were massive, each larger than a Vektari city ship, and they moved through space in a formation that suggested intelligence and coordination. They will arrive in this system within 36 hours, he reported. Our calculations show they will investigate the larger debris fields first, which gives us time to complete our preparations and coordinate with your vessel. What exactly do you need from the Brightfinder? Taemin asked, though he was beginning to understand the answer. Your quantum communication array can reach other Project Lighthouse ships instantly across galactic distances, Dayun explained. We need to coordinate our attack with teams in adjacent systems to ensure that none of the Devourers escape to warn. Their main fleet, the concept of a larger Devourer fleet, was new information that sent chills through the Vektari crew. Boram was the first to ask the obvious question. How many Devourer ships are there in total? The human crew exchanged glances before Captain Hyojin answered. Our best estimate is between 2,000 and 3,000 ships organized into fleets of various sizes. They appear to be working systematically through the galaxy, consuming everything in their path as they move toward the galactic core. The numbers were staggering. Even if Project Lighthouse succeeded in destroying every Devourer ship they encountered, they were facing odds of more than 60 to 1. It seemed like an impossible mission, yet the humans continued their work with calm professionalism. Why do you do this? Boram asked quietly. Your own species could evacuate to safety beyond the galaxy's edge. Why risk everything to protect worlds that do not even know you exist? Captain Hyojin looked at each of her crew members before responding. Because someone has to. When we first left Earth and saw how vast and dangerous the galaxy could be, we made a choice. We decided that intelligence and civilization were worth preserving, regardless of what species created them. As both crews worked together to prepare for the coming encounter, the Vektari began to understand that they were witnessing something unprecedented. Humanity was not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for the survival of all intelligent life in the galaxy, and they had been doing so in secret for years. The question now was whether their careful preparations would be enough when the Devourers finally arrived. The transformation of the HSS Persistence was complete and terrifying. What had been a dark, seemingly lifeless derelict moments before now hummed with active power systems and bright corridor lighting. The Vektari boarding party found themselves trapped as blast doors sealed automatically throughout the ship, cutting off their escape route to the boarding shuttle. Boram spoke urgently into her communicator. Captain Deho, we have a situation aboard the human vessel. The ship has come alive, and we are unable to return to our shuttle. Request immediate assistance. The response that came was not from Captain Deho, but from the ship's communication system itself. A calm, clear human voice spoke in perfect Vektari, though with an accent they had never heard before. Greetings, Vektari vessel Brightfinder. I am Captain Hyojin of the Terran Deep Space Command. Thank you for responding to our invitation. Taemin looked up from the computer terminal where he had been working, his 4 eyes wide with shock. The ship's systems show 5 human life signs throughout the vessel. They were here all along, somehow hidden from our scans. The voice continued speaking, and now additional humans could be heard moving through the corridors with purpose and confidence. Please do not be alarmed. Your boarding party is perfectly safe, though they will need to remain aboard for the time being. There are matters of galactic security that require immediate discussion. On the bridge of the Brightfinder, Captain Deho watched his control displays with growing alarm. His ship's systems were being infiltrated by programs he did not recognize, advanced software that moved through his computer networks like living things. Defenses that should have stopped any intrusion were bypassed as if they did not exist. Jinwoo, What is happening to our systems? Deho demanded, though he could see the answer on every screen around him. Human code was spreading through the Brightfinder's networks, taking control of everything from navigation to communications. The human ship is broadcasting some kind of cyber warfare program, Jin Woo replied, his tentacles moving frantically over his controls as he tried to regain control. Our firewalls are useless against it. The code is more sophisticated than anything I have seen before. Aboard the HSS Persistence, the Vektari boarding party found themselves face to face with the ship's crew as they emerged from concealed chambers throughout the vessel. Captain Hyojin was a tall, lean human with short, dark hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything around her instantly. She wore a uniform that looked both practical and well-used, and she carried herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to command. "My apologies for the deception," she said, addressing Boram and the others, "but we needed to be certain of your intentions before revealing ourselves. My crew and I have been tracking a significant threat in this sector, and your arrival presented us with an opportunity we could not ignore." The other human crew members appeared from various directions, each looking as alert and professional as their captain. Engineer Daun was a compact woman whose hands were stained with machine oil, suggesting she had been working on ship systems right up until the moment of contact. Navigator Wonsik moved with the precise efficiency of someone who spent his life calculating courses through dangerous space. Science Officer Junho carried a data pad covered with notes and readings, while weapons specialist Kyung-mi kept one hand near her sidearm, though she did not appear immediately threatening. "We have been monitoring your salvage operations for several days," Captain Hyojin continued. "The HSS Persistence has been stationed in this region as part of a larger defensive operation. What appeared to be a derelict vessel was actually a carefully prepared ambush position." Taman found his voice first among the shocked Vektari crew. "But our scans showed no life signs, no power signatures. How did you hide an entire crew and operational systems from our sensors?" Engineer Daun stepped forward with what might have been pride in her expression. "Human engineering focuses on adaptability rather than pure efficiency. Our ship's systems can be configured to mimic complete power failure while maintaining full operational capability through hidden backup networks. We have been running silent for months. To what purpose?" Boram demanded, her security instincts still on high alert despite the apparently peaceful nature of the contact. "Why would humans need to operate in secret in this sector?" Science Officer Junho consulted his datapad before responding. "We have been tracking what we call the Devourers, an ancient species that poses an existential threat to all intelligent life in this galaxy. 3 of their scout ships are approaching this system, and they will arrive within the next 48 hours. The name meant nothing to the Vektari, but the seriousness in Junho's voice was unmistakable. Captain Hyojin activated a holographic display that showed the local star system, with tracking data indicating the approach of 3 massive objects from deep space. "The Devourers are unlike any enemy your people have encountered," she explained. "They do not conquer worlds or enslave populations. They consume everything, breaking down matter at the molecular level to fuel their expansion across the galaxy. Once they arrive at a system, nothing remains but empty space," Wonsik added. "Our calculations show that their current course will take them through 17 inhabited systems, including your homeworld of Vektari Prime. The total population, at risk, exceeds 2 billion individuals across multiple species." The Vektari boarding party stood in stunned silence as they absorbed this information. If the humans were telling the truth, they were facing a threat that made their current situation aboard the Persistence seem insignificant by comparison. "Why should we believe you?" Boram asked, though her voice lacked its earlier hostility. "Why would humans risk their lives to warn other species about this threat?" Captain Hyojin's expression became serious, almost grim. "Because it is what we do. Humanity learned long ago that the galaxy is full of dangers that threaten all intelligent life. We made a choice to stand guard against those threats, even when other species do not know we are there." Weapons Specialist Kyung-mi stepped forward, her hand moving away from her weapon. "The HSS Persistence is part of Project Lighthouse, a network of ships stationed throughout the galaxy to provide early warning and first response against existential threats. We have been hunting the Devourers for over a year. On the Brightfinder, Captain Deho found himself in communication with the human captain as the cyber warfare programs established a secure channel between the two ships. Despite his shock at the situation, he had to admit that the human systems were far more sophisticated than he had imagined possible. "Captain Hyjin, you say that your ship was hunting these devourers. What do you need from us?" he asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Your ship has powerful sensors and quantum communication arrays," she replied. "We need to coordinate our attack with other human vessels in the region, and your equipment would allow us to maintain contact across interstellar distances. In return, we can share our intelligence about the devourer threat and help protect your home system." As the two captains spoke, the boarding party aboard the HSS Persistence found themselves being given a tour of the ship's true capabilities. What had appeared to be a simple research vessel was actually a sophisticated hunter-killer craft, equipped with experimental weapons and stealth systems that had taken years to develop. The revelation that humanity had been secretly protecting the galaxy from threats that other species did not even know existed was almost too much to process. The Vectari had always considered themselves the most advanced civilization in their region of space. Yet here were humans operating with technology and strategies that made their own efforts seem primitive. As both crews worked to understand their new situation, none of them realized that the Devourer scouts were closer than they had calculated, and the real test of human and Vectari cooperation was about to begin. The boarding shuttle docked with the human vessel with a soft clang that echoed through both ships. Engineer Taman checked his equipment one final time before nodding to Security Chief Boram. The airlock cycled through its sequence, and the heavy doors slid open to reveal the interior of the HSS Persistence. The first thing that struck the Vectari boarding party was how cramped everything felt. Human ships were built for creatures much smaller than the Vectari, and the corridors barely allowed two team members to walk side by side. Emergency lighting flickered along the walls, casting strange shadows that seemed to move when no one was looking directly at them. "Atmosphere is breathable but stale," reported technician Kyung-soo, consulting his scanner. "The air recycling systems must still be partially functional, though power levels are very low throughout the ship." Boram moved ahead of the group, her weapon ready but not raised. The corridor stretched ahead of them, lined with pipes and cables that ran along the walls and ceiling in what seemed like random patterns. Human engineering made no sense to Vectari minds, but somehow their ships kept working despite appearing to violate every principle of good design. "This way leads to what should be the main computer core," Taman said, consulting the rough schematic his team had built from external scans. "If we can access their systems, we should be able to get a complete picture of what this ship was doing out here." The team moved deeper into the vessel, passing closed doors and darkened chambers. Some rooms appeared to be crew quarters, small spaces barely large enough for a single human to sleep and store personal belongings. Others looked like laboratories filled with equipment that the Vectari did not recognize but which appeared sophisticated despite its crude appearance. "Captain Daeho, we have reached the computer core," Taemin reported over his communicator. "The main systems appear to be intact, though they are running on minimal power. I am attempting to access their databases now." As Taemin worked to interface with the human computer systems, the rest of the boarding party spread out to explore other areas of the ship. The HSS Persistence was much larger than it had appeared from outside, with multiple levels connected by narrow stairways and maintenance shafts that seemed designed for creatures who could move through tight spaces quickly. Boram found herself in what appeared to be a weapons locker. The room contained several human firearms, all secured in locked cases, but what troubled her was that some of the cases were empty. According to the inventory list mounted on the wall, several weapons were missing from their proper storage locations. "Taemin, I am finding evidence that someone has been aboard this ship recently," she called over the team communication channel. "Weapons are missing from storage and some of the crew quarters show signs of recent habitation." "That is impossible," Taemin replied, not looking up from the computer terminal he was trying to access. "Our scans showed no life signs anywhere on this vessel." Boram moved to examine one of the crew quarters more carefully. The bed was made, but she could see impressions in the fabric that suggested someone had slept there recently. Personal belongings were arranged on a small desk, including what appeared to be photographs of humans and handwritten notes in their primitive script. Meanwhile, Technician Wanbin had discovered something equally disturbing in the ship's main laboratory. The room was filled with sophisticated equipment for studying biological samples, but what caught his attention were the specimen containers. Many were empty, but others contained samples that appeared to be fresh, not the dried remains he would expect from a derelict vessel. "This makes no sense," Wanbin muttered to himself, studying a container that held what looked like tissue samples from an unknown alien species. These specimens should have degraded years ago if this ship has been abandoned. In the computer core, Taemin finally managed to access the ship's basic systems. The information he found was both enlightening and confusing. According to the logs, the HSS Persistence had been launched 3 years ago as part of a human deep space research mission. The crew consisted of 5 individuals: Captain Hyejin, Navigator Wonsik, Chief Engineer Dayun, Science Officer Junho, and Weapons Specialist Kyungmi. The mission records indicated that the ship had been investigating what the humans called anomalous readings in dark space. Though the exact nature of these readings was not clear from the available data, what was clear was that the ship had disappeared from human space over a year ago, with no distress signals or communication with their homeworld. "Captain, I am accessing the ship's logs now," Taemin reported. "The vessel is definitely the HSS Persistence, a human research ship that went missing. But there are inconsistencies in the data that I do not understand." As Taemin continued to work through the computer files, other members of the boarding party made additional discoveries throughout the ship. The engineering section contained equipment that was far more advanced than typical human technology, including power systems that seemed designed for stealth operations and sensor arrays that could detect objects at impossible distances. Most puzzling of all, the ship's main computer was still running complex calculations in the background. Despite appearing to be powered down, the system was actively tracking something in nearby space, though the nature of the target was encrypted beyond the Vektari team's ability to decode quickly. Boram gathered her security team in the ship's main corridor, her unease growing stronger with each new discovery. "Something is very wrong here," she told them quietly. "This ship is not what it appears to be. The crew quarters show recent habitation, weapons are missing from storage, and the computer systems are still active despite our scans showing the ship is completely dead." Before any of her team could respond, the lights throughout the HSS Persistence suddenly shifted from the dim emergency lighting to a bright, steady illumination. The change was so sudden and dramatic that several of the Vektari crew members reached for their weapons instinctively. "Taemin, report," Boram barked into her communicator. "What just happened?" "The ship's main power systems just came online," Taemin replied, his voice tight with confusion. "All major systems are activating throughout the vessel." "This is not possible." Our scans showed no active power source. As the boarding party tried to understand what was happening, they heard something that made their blood run cold. Footsteps echoed through the corridors, slow and deliberate. Coming from deeper within the ship, someone was moving through the HSS Persistence, and they were heading directly toward the Vektari boarding party. Boram raised her weapon and gestured for her team to take defensive positions. "All teams, we may have survivors aboard this vessel. Maintain alert status and prepare for contact with unknown individuals." The footsteps grew closer, accompanied by the sound of doors opening and closing throughout the ship. It was clear that whoever was aboard knew the vessel's layout perfectly, moving through it with the confidence of someone who belonged there. As the Vektari team prepared for whatever they might encounter, none of them realized that they had just walked into a trap that had been 3 years in the making. The Vektari salvage vessel Brightfinder moved slowly through the void sector, its powerful scanners sweeping the dark space for anything valuable. Captain Deho stood on the bridge watching the displays with practiced eyes. The void sector was where ships came to die, and dead ships meant salvage opportunities for those brave enough to venture into the dangerous region. "Captain, we have something on long-range sensors," called out First Officer Jinwoo from his station. His tentacles moved quickly over the controls as he refined the readings. "It appears to be a human vessel." Deho's 4 eyes brightened with interest. Human ships were always worth investigating. While the humans were clearly less advanced than the Vektari, their technology had an odd effectiveness that made it valuable on the black market. Human ships could keep running with repairs that would make any proper engineer sick to their stomachs. "Show me," Deho ordered, moving to the main display screen. The image that appeared made the entire bridge crew lean forward. A human ship hung motionless in space, surrounded by a field of debris and smaller wreckage. The vessel was clearly old, its hull scarred by countless micrometeorite impacts. Dark burn marks from radiation exposure streaked along its sides. Most telling of all, no light showed anywhere on the craft and their sensors detected no power signatures. "Looks like it has been drifting here for years," Jinwoo said, studying the readings. "The hull damage is consistent with long-term exposure to cosmic radiation and debris impacts." Engineer Taemin joined them on the bridge, his scanner already focused on the derelict ship. The design is typical human construction. Thick armor plating, redundant systems, and what looks like a research configuration. I can see laboratory modules attached to the main hull. "Any signs of life?" Daeho asked, though he already knew the answer. Dead ships did not broadcast distress signals or show heat signatures. "None at all, Captain. The ship is completely cold. Whatever happened to the crew, it happened a long time ago." Taemin replied, his excitement growing. This could be a significant find. Human research vessels often carry advanced equipment that we can adapt to our own systems. Security Chief Boram stepped forward, her expression more cautious than the others. "Captain, something feels wrong about this. Look at the ship's position." Daeho turned to study the tactical display. Boram was right to be suspicious. The human vessel sat perfectly positioned in the center of a debris field, as if it had been placed there deliberately. Most derelict ships tumbled slowly through space, pushed by solar winds and gravitational forces. This one held station with unusual precision. "You worry too much, Boram," Daeho said with a dismissive gesture. "The ship probably got caught in the gravitational balance between those two asteroid clusters. It is simple orbital mechanics." Boram did not look convinced, but she returned to her station without further comment. As security chief, it was her job to be paranoid. But Daeho had not built his reputation by avoiding every potential risk. "Taemin, prepare a boarding party," Daeho ordered. "I want a full salvage assessment of that vessel. If it is as intact as it appears, we could be looking at enough valuable technology to fund our operations for the next year." The engineer's excitement was obvious as he gathered his equipment. "I will take a full technical team, Captain. If the ship's computer systems are still functional, we might be able to access their research data as well. Human scientific methods are primitive, but they sometimes stumble onto interesting discoveries." As the Bright Finder moved closer to the derelict vessel, the details became clearer. The human ship was larger than it had first appeared, easily 3 times the size of most human vessels they had encountered before. Faded letters along the hull identified it as the HSS Persistence, though several letters were too damaged to read clearly. The name suggests this was a long-range exploration vessel, Jinwoo observed. Humans often give their ships names that reflect their intended mission profiles, or their stubborn refusal to acknowledge when they are beaten, Taemin added with amusement. "I have read reports about human psychology. They have an unusual tendency to continue fighting even when victory is impossible." Daeho positioned the Bright Finder alongside the human vessel, keeping a safe distance while his crew made final preparations for boarding. The derelict ship dominated their view screen now, its damaged hull telling the story of whatever disaster had claimed it. Scoring along the sides suggested weapon impacts, while gaps in the armor revealed twisted metal beneath. "Captain, I am detecting an airlock on the port side that appears to be intact," reported Jinwoo. "The seals show some damage, but it should be safe for boarding." "Good. Boram, you will accompany the boarding party. I know you have concerns, but I want our security protocols followed exactly." Daeho turned to address his crew. "Everyone remember that human ships are built differently than ours. Their corridors are narrow, their systems are placed illogically, and they love to install backup systems for their backup systems. Move carefully and stay together." As the boarding shuttle launched from the Bright Finder, carrying Taemin's technical team and Boram's security personnel, Daeho remained on the bridge to monitor the operation. The human ship grew larger in his view screen as the shuttle approached, and he found himself studying the vessel more carefully. Something about the HSS Persistence bothered him, though he could not identify exactly what. The ship looked appropriately damaged and lifeless, yet there was something too perfect about its condition. For a vessel that had supposedly been drifting in space for years, it showed remarkably little structural deterioration. "Captain, the boarding party is approaching the airlock now," Jinwoo reported, All systems show green for the operation. Daeho nodded, pushing his doubts aside. Salvage work always involved some risk, and the potential rewards from a human research vessel were too valuable to pass up. The Vectari had built their reputation on superior technology and engineering, but even they could learn something from human ingenuity. As the boarding shuttle docked with the derelict vessel, Daeho settled back in his command chair to wait. In a few hours, his crew would have stripped the human ship of everything valuable, and the Bright Finder would continue on to the next salvage opportunity. It was routine work, the kind of operation they had performed dozens of times before. He had no way of knowing that aboard the seemingly dead human ship, ancient systems were quietly coming online, and patient hunters were finally ready to reveal themselves. The next 18 hours transformed both the HSS Persistence and the Bright Finder into something neither crew had imagined possible. Under Engineer Dayun's patient guidance, the Vectari crew learned to modify their ship's systems for combat operations they had never considered necessary. "Your sensor array is more powerful than anything we have access to," Dayun explained to Taemin as they worked together in the Bright Finder's engineering section. "But it was designed for passive observation, not active hunting. We need to reconfigure the entire system to track targets that can bend space around themselves." The work was unlike anything in Taemin's experience. Human engineering philosophy seemed to assume that every system would eventually fail, so they built multiple backup methods to accomplish the same task. What looked like inefficient redundancy to Vectari eyes was actually tactical flexibility that allowed rapid adaptation to unexpected situations. "You modify your quantum communicator like this," Dayun showed him, her hands moving quickly over components that should not have been compatible with each other. "Human systems are designed to work with whatever materials are available. We learned early that perfect solutions that take too long to implement are less useful than adequate solutions that work immediately." Meanwhile, aboard the Persistence, weapons specialist Kyungmi was teaching Boram and her security team about human combat doctrine. The lesson was eye-opening in ways the Vectari had not expected. "Your weapons are designed to stop enemies efficiently," Kyungmi observed, examining a Vectari plasma rifle. "Our weapons are designed to ensure mission completion regardless of whether we survive the engagement." She demonstrated by showing them the modifications she had made to the ship's mining equipment. Cargo haulers had been converted into missile launchers, maintenance drones had been equipped with nuclear charges, and even the coffee maker in the crew quarters could be overloaded to create an explosive device. "Everything can be a weapon if you need it to be," she explained. "The Devourers are stronger than us, faster than us, and more numerous than us. Our only advantage is that they do not expect us to sacrifice everything to stop them." Captain Hyejin worked with both crews to coordinate the larger tactical picture. The quantum communication array from the Bright Finder, enhanced with human modifications, allowed them to maintain contact with Project Lighthouse teams across multiple star systems. "Lighthouse 7 reports 3 Devourer ships approaching the Cygnus sector," reported Navigator Wansik, managing communications from his station. "Lighthouse 12 has engagement with 2 scouts near the Vega system. All teams are reporting similar patterns of approach." The scale of the coordinated operation became clear as reports came in from human teams throughout the region. Project Lighthouse was not just defending this single system, but was engaged in simultaneous operations across dozens of locations. Each team of humans was facing impossible odds, yet they continued their missions with steady determination. "How do you coordinate operations across such distances?" Jinwoo asked, studying the communication protocols that allowed instant contact across interstellar space. "The quantum entanglement requirements alone should be beyond any single organization's resources." Science Officer Junho smiled at the question. "Project Lighthouse has been in development for 5 years. Every human deep space mission for the past decade contributed resources and equipment to the network. We have been preparing for this threat since before we fully understood what we were facing." As the preparations continued, the Vectari crew began to understand that human primitiveness was actually a sophisticated form of strategic thinking. Where other species focused on perfecting individual technologies, humans created systems that could adapt and continue functioning even under extreme damage. The sensor readings showed the approaching Devourer ships more clearly now. The 3 vessels were unlike anything in known databases, seeming to shift and change shape as they moved through space. Their hulls appeared organic, almost alive, and they left strange distortions in space-time behind them as they traveled. Energy readings are off any known scale, Taman reported, his instruments struggling to process the data. The power output from those ships could supply our entire home system for centuries. That power comes from everything they have consumed, Junho explained grimly. Each of those ships represents hundreds of worlds and billions of lives converted into raw energy. They grow stronger with every system they destroy. The tactical display showed the Devourer's approach route, and it confirmed the humans' predictions. The alien ships were heading directly for the larger debris fields in the system, drawn by the concentration of matter they could consume. Their course would take them through the carefully prepared minefield that Wansik and his team had been laying for months. All Lighthouse teams report ready status, Wansik announced. Detonation sequences are synchronized across 14 star systems. When we engage, teams throughout the galaxy will trigger similar ambushes simultaneously. Captain Deho, monitoring the operation from his bridge, found himself impressed by the complexity and scope of human planning. Captain Hyojin, your species has been conducting a secret war for the survival of galactic civilization, and most of us never knew the threat existed. That was intentional, she replied over the communication link. Fear of the Devourers would have caused panic and abandonment of border systems, making their job easier. It was more effective to deal with the threat quietly, while allowing normal civilization to continue. As the final preparations were completed, both crews took their positions for the engagement. The Persistence moved to a concealed position among the asteroids, its stealth systems making it effectively invisible to conventional sensors. The Brightfinder remained in open space, modified to appear like a legitimate salvage vessel that had stumbled into the wrong place at the wrong time. The plan is simple, Captain Hyojin explained to both crews. The Devourers will investigate what appears to be easy targets. When they begin their consumption process, they will trigger the radiation mines we have planted throughout the debris field. The resulting contamination will poison their systems and prevent them from escaping to warn the main fleet. And if the plan does not work? Boram asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Weapons specialist Kyung Mi checked her equipment one final time. Then we ram our ships into theirs and detonate everything we have. The mission succeeds, or none of us go home. The sensor displays showed the Devourer ships entering the outer edge of the star system. They moved with the confidence of predators that had never encountered effective resistance, their massive hulls pulsing with the energy of consumed worlds. In a few hours, they would discover that humanity had been waiting for them. As both crews made their final preparations, they knew they were about to witness either the greatest victory in galactic history or the end of everything they had fought to protect. The hunt that had been 3 years in the making was finally about to begin,